Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 8-23 mid-tier list. So this is the first patch of the preseason. There's a ton of changes. Some of the most notable ones are the change to towers. So now each tower has plates. Each plate is 1,000 health, and basically after you take each plate, you get 160 gold. But the tower gets stronger and stronger as you take more plates consecutively, so it's really hard to take towers quickly in like one go. So if the jungler ganks, you kill somebody, you can't just take the tower in like 1 or 2 tries. It's going to take you several tries. So there are multiple schools of thought on this and how it will affect the meta, and we'll see how it shakes out. My intuition right now is that it hurts roamers and assassins a lot more, because if you leave the lane, they're going to get plates, and that's guaranteed extra income for them. Whereas before, unless they completely took your tower, then you didn't really lose that much. You lost some of the wave experience and some of the wave gold, but now you're going to lose wave experience, you're going to lose wave gold, and you're going to lose plates. 1 or 2 plates every time you roam, and that's a lot. So, you know, if you get a kill bot lane, for instance, if you're Talon and you run bot lane, you know, you might be able to get a kill down there. But if you get a kill, it's going to be about 300 gold, right? If they get a plate off your tower, that's 160. And if they're able to deny a wave, then that wave is going to be, you know, somewhere next to an extra 100 gold. And so it's going to be really, really close to the same value. They're probably going to get more experience, and they're getting damage on your tower. And it's basically guaranteed. You know, it's not guaranteed that if you go bottom, you're going to get a kill. But it's pretty guaranteed that if you're not in that lane for about 20 seconds and they realize what you're doing and they push it, that they're going to get a plate, and they're going to deny the CS, and they're going to get a preferable back. So it is much, much more risky. It's not just risk-free, you know, just push it with Talon or Aurelion Soul or Twisted Fate or whatever and go roam bottom. There are consequences for this. So, I think that's the biggest meta shift in my mind, is that it makes laners a lot stronger. If you're really good in the laning phase, I don't know if you can hear her screaming. My wife opened up the door. I don't know if y'all could hear that from the other room. Sorry about that. I just started freaking out. My wife's feeding her in there. But anyway, so I think it punishes assassins. I think it punishes roamers. More than it did. Another change that also punishes assassins to an extent is the new bounty system, the resets. So basically, here, let me just pull it up real quick. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I just wanted to reiterate, because I know not everyone has read the patch notes, not everyone has watched my other videos. But you should, and I do have them linked. If you want to see my 80 carry tier list, I have it here. If you want to see my support tier list, I have it here. You can always access this Google Doc in the descriptions. I'll have timestamps as well. And if you go through this, then you can find a little mini guide for each one of the other, for each one of the champions. That'll have a link to the Wikia, which will tell you all about the stats. It'll have a 1 to 5 rating system, runes, recommended items. And as far as the rating system goes, 1 is one of the worst champions at that particular task, and 5 is one of the best champions of the mid laners. So lane pressures is how likely are you to be able to get priority, to pressure the enemy, deal some poke damage, rotate, roam. Kill threat is how likely are you able to get a kill in the lane, either one-on-one or with the jungler in a 2-on-2 situation. Safety is how likely are you to be able to avoid ganks and have good positioning in the lane. Scaling is how well does the champion perform over time. And then reliability is a combination of how difficult is the champion to play mechanically, to play at a, you know, a competent level, how difficult are the decisions, and then also how well does the champion fit into the overall meta. Are there a bunch of other counter picks out there? Does it fit in well with the types of champions your team might be playing? So how likely is it that you'll be able to put up consistent results on that champion? But about the patch notes here, let me just pull these up real quick just so I can show you a couple of numbers. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I do have a full patch notes video as well that you can check out. They did nerf Dark Harvest, by the way. It's still really good, but it's not at the super insane levels on release. Be sure to check out the patch notes video if you want the whole rundown. I'm just going to talk about the things that I think are most important in determining the mid lane meta. Here are the tower changes. I pretty much told you the major deal on that. They're harder to take, but as you take the plates, you get a lot of gold. So now first tower blood plus all of the plates is 1450 gold. That's equal to almost 5 kills worth of gold. So it's really, really important. There are other people out there who will argue, well, it takes longer to take the towers, and therefore roaming is actually better because you can roam without them getting your tower. That is true, but they're getting so much relatively guaranteed gold that I mentioned before. If they just get one plate and deny one wave, they're getting about as much gold as you would get if you get the kill in the bot lane, and it's much more likely that they're going to get that plate and that wave than you are going to get that kill. Now obviously if you get multiple kills and then you take a plate to counter it in the bot lane, so if you roam bottom with Talon, you get 2 kills, then you take off 2 plates off their bot lane, or you go grab a dragon or something like that, yeah, it makes up for it. So it's not like completely anyone that wants to roam is terrible now. There's just a you have to be much more calculated with your risk assessment when you do that. You can't just automatically go roam every time you push a wave in. You need to think, is this actually going to succeed, or am I going to pay too high of a price for this? Yeah, it's basically the tower TLDR there. Drakes are also really important, so anything that can take Drakes really quickly or push and get priority in the lane to rotate, to control scuttles, to control dragons, things like that are going to be a lot stronger. Where are the bounties? Here we go. And the bounty system. Now, this is another one that's going to disincentivize people who are playing assassins. The main reason for this is they're going to get a lot more gold back whenever they kill people, or whenever they kill you. So if you get ahead, if you get like 5 kills, they're going to get a lot of that gold back. A lot more than they previously did. So that means more and more, you're basically borrowing gold when you get kills. So you're getting some nice gold, you're powering up your items, but if they kill you back, then they're going to get a lot of that gold back. So they're going to get a refund, and that creates kind of a rubber banding effect where you can be really strong for a little bit, your team can be winning, but then if your team goofs around and tries to, you know, get too fancy and they die a couple of times, the enemy can rubber band and bounce right back with a lot of their gold. This does not apply to dragons, barons, and towers. They don't get any kill bounties on towers, right? If you take their 3 towers first, you just get to keep that gold. Now, if they kill your towers back, yeah, they're going to get some gold in return, but it's not going to be extra gold, right? That's the thing about the kill bounty system, is not only do they get the gold for killing you, right, but they're also going to get that bonus gold on top of it. So they still get the 300 for killing you, like it normally would be, but then they get this extra in addition to that. So that's really good. And they also added this in to where if you have more farm than the average on the enemy team, you get an additional gold bounty on your head. And so basically, I mean, the TLDR of this is assassins are worse because if you ever die, if you ever give up a kill, then they're going to get you back. Versus champions that can consistently apply more pressure to towers, objectives, or are going to be difficult to kill to get that gold back, are going to have a bit more of an advantage. So, you know, the knock to roaming, this bounty stuff, like the power of being able to siege and get those plates, all of these things make for a much more balanced mid lane meta, I think, in the sense that siege champions are now going to be viable again, control mages are going to be a bit better, champions need to farm up a little bit are going to be better because they're going to have usually until about 14 minutes before the lane breaks, instead of like 10 minutes in the previous meta. But then assassins are still going to be pretty good with things like Dark Harvest, being very strong and very popular right now. So I think that Riot has done almost the unthinkable on this patch and has actually balanced mid lane pretty well. There's a fairly good representation of a lot of different styles of champions on this list. So let's go ahead and get in here, but I think that they've done an excellent job overall in this patch, balancing it out, bringing back in control mages, bringing back in siege champs, but still allowing for assassins to be viable. I think that's very, very difficult to balance, but I think they've done a phenomenal job of doing that so far. There are some outliers. There are overpowered individual champions, and we'll talk about those. But I think as far as like class balance, like different types of champions being viable, I think they did a great job with that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the tier list here. And remember, this is intended for a plat- audience. And then we're looking at the overall meta and kind of the reliability of champions as well. I will say, as far as mid lane goes, so in other words, we're not talking about one-trick people. We're not talking about challenger level people or pro level people. We're going to be looking at what I think is going to be good moving forward through this patch, and then possibly into the next patch too, depending on what they nerf. But a lot of these are skill matchups. There are not many easy to play champions near the top here. All of them have very specific counter picks that are good against them because it's all pretty balanced. There aren't that many face roll champions that can just take on anything. There are a couple that we'll talk about that are pretty good against a lot of things, but it is definitely a lane of counter picks. You need to be able to get a lead. A lot of these champions are not very good at playing from behind. There aren't a lot of the utility champions that are up near the very top. And so it is skill matchup. And I feel like a lot of these champions can beat the other champions if you outplay them. So yeah, there are some counter picks, but a lot of these champions have a lot of outplay potential as well. And if you get really good on a couple of them, then you can beat other people, even if it's a lower rank. So in other words, you know, and that's what makes it so difficult to do this tier list. I've spent several hours today researching, trying to figure out how to do this, because this is one of the hardest tier lists I've ever had to do, because there's so many champions who could be good. I mean, Katarina could be tier 1, Fizz could be tier 1, Ryze could be tier 1, if they're all very, very strong. You know, like if you have a lot of practice and you get ahead on that champion, you know, you can destroy people. You know, versus someone like Akali can be gutter tier. She can be really bad if you don't know how to play her, or if you fall really far behind early, you go 0-3, then all of a sudden you're gutter tier. You know, and so it's a very, very heavy, I think it's the hardest lane to play right now. During the laning phase, certainly. Just because, you know, if you slip up, it's a problem with all of these champions, because not many of them play well from behind. So let's go ahead and get in here. Let's talk about it a little bit. Okay, so I just wanted to give you that, just let you know, because the meta has shifted quite a bit from what people may have been used to. If you didn't play near the end of last season, you just started in the preseason, it's going to be very different. Okay, so another couple of big changes here. All of this has culminated in Karthus being fantastic right now. So what is it about Karthus? Why is he so strong? I think he is #1 right now. In fact, I think he's so strong that he's a top contender for top lane, and I think he's even becoming respectable in the bot lane. He's a triple threat. That's another thing that you'll notice here, because a lot of these lanes, they're not super matchup dependent, but in a sense they are. You can still outplay bad matchups, but it's always nice if you can avoid bad matchups, right? And so almost a lot of these top-end picks, like the top 5, not necessarily Leblanc, but a lot of these top-end picks are going to be flexible. So they can go top or middle. And so that way, if someone, they're not going to know where you're going a lot of times. And so it's going to make it more difficult for them to counterpick you. But then also, if they do manage to guess and counterpick you, then you can maybe switch with your other solo laner depending on the situation. So if your team picks something like Irelia, Akali, you can both communicate with each other and figure out which champion you want to go against and coordinate that, potentially. So the fact that they are flexible adds confusion, adds some tactical diversity. That's just an extra perk that matters a lot more in pro play and sort of challenger level play, but can still be relevant in lower tiers. As long as you communicate well with your team, you can probably make that work in a lot of situations. Okay, but like, what's up with Karthus? What's changed about him? Why is he going crazy right now? There's a few things. So first of all, Karthus's ult has always been powerful, and they did buff it fairly recently. They gave it a 0.75 AP ratio instead of a 0.6. So now it does even more damage than it used to. And he's really good for this style of meta in the sense that he can poke really well in lane with his Qs, which do a lot of damage. I mean, it's 260 damage on a 1-second cooldown. He can just non-stop spam these. And this is where the skill comes in. I mean, there's not really much skill in press R, right? And that's kind of the meme with Karthus. You just press R and kill everybody. But really, especially during the laning phase, you need to be able to hit these on the enemy. Now, it has good range at 875, so that makes him a pretty good control mage, does pretty good poke damage, has really, really good farming potential. I mean, this does a lot of damage, especially if you isolate it and just sort of pick off individual farm on the side. You get a mana refund for that early, which helps out a ton once you get your E. And you can turn on Defile and, you know, walk up to the minion wave and spam Qs and just like almost instantly clear the wave. So he has awesome wave clear. It puts pressure on towers. Also, assassins have been, they're still picked, but they're not picked as much as they used to be. And those are very good against Karthus. So he's great against these different kinds of control mages, different bruisery types of champions like Irelia, like Aatrox. Well, Akali's an assassin. She can get on top of him. But a lot of these other champions, if he just plays pretty far back, it's difficult to get on him, and he's going to farm a lot. So that's one sort of meta change that has worked. Also, he can basically roam without leaving his lane. So he can just press R, and that influences these side lanes, and he doesn't have to leave the lane. So he's not going to be losing experience in farm whenever he roams like that. So that's another big benefit of him. Another thing that they changed in the patch notes that a lot of people haven't really talked about, that I talked about quite a bit in my patch notes video, is they took away the jungle bounty penalty or whatever. So you can take a jungle item. I don't know where they said it somewhere up near the top. They took away the penalty. Here we go, jungle items. So he can start with a Hunter's Talisman now and not get a penalty for it. And you might say, well, why would you want to start Hunter's Talisman on Karthus? This is something that people were doing in the midseason during the dreaded funnel comp middle. You don't have to funnel this, though. People forget that there was sort of a meta there before the funnel comp. So he can take Smite, and Smite is not... he doesn't really need a specific summoner. You know, he can get Ignite, he can get Teleport and things like that, but they aren't as necessary. They're okay. But he does get a lot of mana regen off of this, right? And so damaging monsters by any means, dealing additional 60 magic damage over 5 seconds, and you restore 6 seconds for every enemy you're burning. So whenever you walk up to like Raptor's camp, for example, and turn on your Defile, you're dealing an extra 60 magic damage to them. Now, yeah, it's over 5 seconds, but you're restoring 6 health per second whenever you do that. So you're restoring, you know, like 30 health a second. If you have Smite, you can Smite the big one. You're going to gain back even more health. And so it just lets you power farm the Raptors. It lets you go grab the Scuttles if you want. You can go grab the Wolves. It just lets you really farm up like a maniac. And Karthus is very, very good at that. You know, especially once he gets his Tear of the Goddess, he just has almost infinite mana. And if he has blue also, infinite mana, it's going to give him 50 extra experience and 120 early. So it's going to help him power farm to 6. I've seen a Karthus do this in the top lane. He was level 6 when I was level 3 bot lane. I'm not even kidding. Like, it's disgusting. Now, yeah, we had a rough lane. There was a lot of fighting going on bot lane. I think I died at level 3. So we were out of lane for a little bit, but that's still absurd. Even the people who were ahead of us in the lane, who got the kill on us and got the lane priority and stuff like that, they were level 4, I think. And he popped level 6 because he was up top farming golems. And he got the Scuttle with this. And he was just like power farming. He may have gotten a kill or two on the enemy top lane or two, but it gives you a lot of extra experience. And this is a huge thing early as well. The more mana you're missing, you get up to such and such mana per second. This is not mana per 5. This is mana per second. So if you're at 50%, you're getting 5 mana per second. That's 25 mana per 5. And you might say, well, you can't be in the jungle when you're Karthus. Yeah, you can. Let me show you something. If you've never seen anyone do this. Okay, is it gonna... Alright. Well, it's not going to show us precisely. But this little area right here, I think you can see, if you just farm, and you can stand like right here, and that counts as the jungle. So if you just stand on this edge here, so you're like farming, you just push them in, and you just stand right here and wait, or you can stand, just get your toe in the river here, or you can stand over here. Just like anywhere that's not in this lane, it's just slightly off to the side, counts as standing in the jungle. And top lane, you know, you can just put your toe in the water here, and that counts as jungle or river, or you can stand here, and it counts as the jungle. So it's really easy to get that extra mana regen, which is just insane on Karthus. It's so much, even bot lane, like if you're on blue side bot lane, you can stand like right here and it'll count. It's a little tougher on this side. You'd have to stand like in this bush or just like dip your toe in the river over here. So that's a little bit more annoying. But like if you're on blue side, just standing right here can trigger it. So that's really powerful on him. Now, beforehand, you may say, well, why didn't people do this before? Well, they did in the mid-season. They were running Karthus like this. But they added a penalty to where if you had the most gold on your team, if you did something like that, then you were losing a ton of gold. Well, they took that away. And I think Karthus is the biggest beneficiary of that. So I think that you can start with kind of this Hunter's Talisman now. I forgot how much is it? 350? Yeah, it's 350 to buy. So you can still get 3 potions with this too. It's just sick. Like, it's so good. It doesn't give you AP, but whatever. Like, it just lets you power farm so hard. Because you have Smite, you can go contest and grab Scuttles. you know, you can counter jungle them. You can, you know, grab your own jungle really easily. You take dragons really quickly. There's probably a certain point, I don't know when it is precisely, but you can probably go solo the dragon pretty soon if you're Karthus. If you have this Hunter's Talisman, which is going to do extra damage, you just spam your Q. Remember, he's amazing at taking dragons and taking, you know, Baron and things like that too, because each one of these Qs is going to be doing like 260 damage on a 1 second cooldown. This, I can't express just how much DPS that is against a stationary target. It's insane. If you think of a lot of spells that champions have, you know, like a Kassadin Q or something like that is going to be on like probably a 7 second cooldown at some point, and it does 260 damage. So this is like 7 times more damage than something like a Kassadin Q. As far as like how much damage you can put out over that time against a stationary target. So he just absolutely obliterates neutral objectives like that. So you could probably solo it, or certainly do it really quickly with your jungler, and you're going to have double smite to secure it, so they can't steal it. The same is true for Baron. So yeah, it's really, really powerful on him, I think. And yeah, you're giving up teleport, but you don't need teleport as much because you're not going to have to teleport to those other lanes because you can just press R. Yeah, teleport's nice to go back to your lane, but you really don't need it that much. And Ignite is the same thing. You don't really need Ignite as much either because you're not really trying to kill individual champions as often. You're just trying to farm as hard as you possibly can, and then you're going to get your kills from your ult across the map. So you don't ever upgrade the Hunter's Talisman. You just get it early on to give you basically infinite mana and to help you power farm the jungle. So I think that's a disgusting start on Karthus. I haven't seen people doing that much. I've seen a couple of my games, but it's just gross. It's very, very powerful. So those are a couple of major changes. Assassins being less strong, staying in lane, power farming, pushing the wave, more powerful than ever. Being able to influence side lanes with your ult, also being able to take Hunter's Machete early on, and the runes. So the runes have changed a lot too on Karthus, and he is one of the best users of Dark Harvest, because, you know, he can kill anyone with his ult at any time across the map pretty much and get Dark Harvest stacks. Another really nasty trick with this is if you go Liandry's, which a lot of people have been doing lately, it does that burn damage over time. And don't forget your Dark Harvest resets, and it triggers off of any damage. Let me pull it up here real quick. Where, no, I had the rune page somewhere, I think. Here we go. The Dark Harvest is the newest hotness. People are all like freaking out about this. So it does a lot of damage early if somebody's low. So this is going to add, you know, this extra damage to Karthus' ult pretty much. It's going to hit everybody across the map with the Dark Harvest. Now it can only trigger once. Now I'm not sure how this stacks. It says damaging a champion below this amount does this much damage and reaps 1 soul. This cannot happen again for 45 seconds. Now, I don't know if it triggers if everybody on the enemy team's low, if you get 5 souls off of that. Or if it just triggers once, it only gives you 1 soul. So I'm not 100% about that. It's very possible it could trigger on everybody, because it says it just goes on cooldown after you trigger it. But I don't know what happens if you simultaneously trigger it on everybody. I'd have to go to like a Reddit forum. I missed that in my research. But even if it only triggers on 1 person, it's still really, really good, because then you get the Liandry burn going. And so if you kill somebody, then it's going to reset after a second and a half. Liandry's is burning. If they're low again, it's going to trigger again on them. So you can actually trigger Dark Harvest 3 times off of the ult. Ult hits them first, Dark Harvest, boom. Second and a half later, they're burning from Liandry's, boom. Second and a half later, burning from Liandry's, boom. Actually, I don't think Dark Harvest triggers Liandry's, does it? I think it has to be your spell. Let me see. Does it reset Liandry's? The Dark Harvest? Dealing ability damage applies the damage over time. I don't think so. That would be like mega disgusting. I don't think Dark Harvest counts because that's rune damage, not ability damage. Because like item damage obviously doesn't count, or Liandry's would just stack with itself and just burn infinitely. It would constantly reset itself. So I don't think that counts. So if items don't count, I doubt that runes count. So I don't think it resets the Liandry's every time Dark Harvest does damage. But it can reset twice. So it's boom, Dark Harvest, lots of damage. Second and a half later, Dark Harvest resets. Liandry's triggers Dark Harvest, boom, resets, boom. So I don't think The way that Dark Harvest is worded, though, it says any damage, not ability damage. Damaging a champion by any means. Okay, so that would include item damage. Okay, so that's what's so disgusting, is you can trigger Dark Harvest across the map on a bunch of different people. If you have Leandries, it can trigger it multiple times. As people die, it just starts chaining together. So, very, very strong on him. And he can also, because they've decoupled the runes from the stats, he can still get 20 AP. Let me get that box off there. He can still cut... he can get 20 AP and then, like, magic resist in the mid lane. And so he doesn't have to get attack speed to go into the precision tree to get presence of mind, which is something he's always loved, right? And he would just take the attack speed, which is terrible on him. But now he can still get the 20 AP, he can take presence of mind, and he can take ulti hunter now. So that gives him a huge cooldown on his ult. I mean, this basically ends up being about a 50% cooldown reduction. So if you think about, you know, what's your base? Maybe 200. Well, let's say it's the next tier, which is 180 on your ult. 180 cooldown. Let's say that you have one CDR item. So you have Seraph's Embrace on him. How it works is you would do times 0.8, because it gives you 20% cooldown. So that triggers first. Then Ulti Hunter, if you have the 15% CDR, you do times 0.85, because you're getting 15% off. And then every time someone dies from presence of mind, let's say 2 people die in a team fight, then it's times 10 every time that triggers, or it's 10% off the cooldown. So you would do times 0.9 times 0.9. So it stacks multiplicatively like that, not additively. So it's not 15% to start with, and then 10%, 10% for 35% off your ult, and then 20% CDR. It's not 55%. But it's whatever this number is, right? Divided by 180. Actually, that is 55%. It's a lot, okay? Just trust me on the math. It's a lot. It's ridiculous. So pretty much this is going to be up every, like, minute and a half in the mid to late game. And it's guaranteed damage, pretty much. Like, a lot of people are going to have things like Hourglass. Hourglass champs are pretty strong right now. Or they're going to have something like Sterix, Gauge, you know, and enchanters are going to be stronger, so you might see some more shields, some redemptions come in. You might see lockets and things like that. So there is some counterplay to his ult. But when we're talking about it being up so often, it's going to be up more often than Locket's going to be up. It's going to be up more often than Zhonya's is going to be up in a lot of cases now with all of this CDR. And you're going to be, like, hard scaling off of being able to farm all those jungle camps and things like that. And you're not going to be everywhere at once. Like, okay, you might have Zhonya's to counter him, but is the AD carry going to have Zhonya's? The AD carry might have the support with Locket around, but is the jungler going to have Locket near them? I mean, it just puts so many constraints on the enemy team. And even if he doesn't kill you, let's say he kills the one person top lane, but then you're taking like half of your health and damage in the bot lane, well, all of a sudden you're at a major disadvantage in that lane, because the enemy team can now engage on you and kill you potentially. So he just puts a ton of pressure over the entire map. And he has been relatively muted for a long time. He hasn't been that great, even though his kit is really good, just because there has been so much counterplay, because there has been a Hex Drinker in the game, Locket, Zhonya's, Enchanters have historically been really strong, and his cooldown is huge. So you know, before you were always going to have your Locket back, pretty much, or it was going to be close to coming back. You were going to be able to, you know, just have a lot of your big cooldowns ready to prepare for this. But now that it's up all the time, and now that it's adding in this extra Dark Harvest stacks for a ton of extra damage, it's just very, very difficult to deal with him. Like, I saw one game where this Karthus didn't even do that well, and he was top lane. He did like 50,000 damage, and he was like 10-10. And the Katarina, who was like 18-2, insane team fight, super assassin, just steamrolled our team, only had 40,000 damage. Now, damage numbers aren't everything, but he gets a lot of free damage, and he's very consistent, right? So he's one of the few champions. I won't spend much more time on him, but I just want to talk about him a lot because there's a lot of things going on that are contributing to why he's powerful, and a lot of people aren't explaining it very well. Everyone knows Dark Harvest is good on him. Most people know that you know, the ulti hunter plus precision is really good. But a lot of people are still sleeping on the jungle item. They're sleeping on how the tower changes, and the nerf to rotations has really helped him out. So there's a lot of really powerful things going on that heavily favor him in this meta. And so I would highly recommend Karthus. The last thing I was going on before I got sidetracked there, he's very consistent. Yeah, you do have to hit your Skittles, right? You have to hit your Qs. That is skill expression, but it's okay if you miss a lot too, you know, as the game goes on. It's only on a 1 second cooldown, so if you miss a couple, you're not super punished as much. Like, obviously, it's nice if you hit every single one, but it's not like it's a 10-second cooldown. Just keep spamming it. And, you know, no matter what happens, even if you get picked off, even if you die in a team fight, you can press R. And there's no way they can stop you from doing this if this is up. They can silence you, they can stun lock you, and just murder you before you can cast any spells. And you're still going to be able to press R in a team fight and knock out like half of the enemy's health minimum off of like 2 items. And that in and of itself, it gives it a huge amount of oops. Insurance, right? So you're always going to be strong. You can still spam your spells when you're dead. So you can still have Defile going. You can still spam your Qs. So it just puts a huge burden on the team to figure out how do you deal with this guy, because he does like damage to everybody off of Requiem. It's like pretty much the enemy team always starts at half health. And it can still do those resets with Dark Harvest. I think Dark Harvest will even trigger even if you're dead, even if you're back in the fountain. If you know, do the Liandry's burn to them and like chain trigger Dark Harvest. So, or if your ally kills somebody, even if you don't have Liandry, well, I guess you'd have the Liandry's to have to keep applying the damage, but either way, it's a lot of guaranteed damage. So he does have skill expression, but he also has that layer of safety, that layer of insurance, where even if you goof him up in the mid game, even if you get caught out in a team fight or blown up, even if they focus fire you, he's still going to do a ton of damage. So he's just very, very difficult to deal with. You have to have very specific comps, very specific items and strategies to try to cope with him. So, and you really don't, if it goes to late game, it's over. Like, just too difficult to get through that. So I would go for Dark Harvest, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, then Presence of Mind, and Coup de Grace. Now, Cheap Shot is flexible. If you want a little more sustain in lane, you can go Taste of Blood. Cheap Shot, if you do slow them with your wall, will deal some extra damage off your Qs. So that one's flexible. It doesn't matter that much. You can do whatever you want. If you're afraid you're going to get camped and ganked, you know, you can do something like Ghost Poro. Although Eyeball Collection is amazing just because you're going to be getting a lot of kills and assists off of your ult. So it's going to stack up really quickly. So I would probably stick with Eyeball Collection. But the rest of these are pretty standard. Very, very strong runes, especially with the new... whatever they're called, the little stat runes that you can get to complement these. I think it's really good. And then you just want to go Sork Boots, Archangels, and then just Liandry's, Morellonomicon, Deathcap, Void Staff. You can do that. So just Sork Boots, Tear of the Goddess. I would go ahead and complete that. The Archangel Staff, even if it's not going to go to Seraphs, just so you get that 20% CDR. And then Liandry's. Can be really good as well. Now you can take the scaling CDR on him if you want, which can be quite good instead of the 10 AP from the first row. So that's something to consider, since you're probably not going to have 40% CDR off of these items, and you are going to scale up really hard off of farming. Now you're only going to get like 5% CDR by level 9 though. Keep that in mind. It's like 1 to 10%, but you literally have to be level 18 to get 10%. So most of the time it's going to be somewhere between like 3 to 5% from like level 5 to 9. But that can still be pretty legit. I mean, 5% off of a... now, 5% is not worth that much gold-wise, right? 5% CDR is worth about 130 gold, whereas 10 AP is going to be worth like 220 gold. And the AP does let you farm harder and do a lot more damage early on. So I would probably err on the AP side, but the 5% CDR is very good. You know, if you have a 3-minute cooldown on your ult, that's 15 seconds before you can ult again. Or 15 fewer seconds before you can ult again. So, you know, there is some flexibility in there, but I think this is pretty standard. Liandry's, I think, is a very good combo with his ult, especially if you're ahead, but I have seen people just go for Morello instead. Just getting that extra spell penetration is good. Although, I mean, you're paying a lot for the Grievous Wounds on that item. It's okay. I just think that Liandry's is a lot stronger. even if you don't get the slow on people, just because that interaction with Dark Harvest that I mentioned before. And remember that Liandry's is really strong now, even if you don't have the slow. It's still 4% of their max health over 3 seconds, so, or 4.5% over 3 seconds. So it's still really strong, even if you don't have the slow. And don't forget that also applies even if somebody else slows them. So, you know, if you have somebody else that's throwing around a lot of slows or stuns and you hit people with stuff, it's still going to trigger the bonus Liandry's. It doesn't just have to be your slow. And there's a good chance a lot of people on your team are going to have some kind of slow. So, that can be handy. That's another reason to potentially go cheap shot as well. But it's up to you. Either way, super strong. One of the most reliable champions on this list. So if you're auto-filled, highly consider doing Karthus. If you just survive and farm and just press R, you know, you're going to scale up and be a huge monster. Okay, but he's kind of the new person to the list. There's been a lot of... He's probably the largest beneficiary of anything in the preseason, I think, has been Karthus. And people are finally waking up to this. Okay, Leblanc, I think, is the next in the line. Now, once again, like I said before, I think that certainly any of these champions could be argued to be number 2, depending on how good you are with the champs. But this is going to be the usual squad of OPs here. Most people are used to this. These champions get banned a lot, so it is very risky to one-trick these. So take that with a grain of salt if you're thinking like, hey, I really want to master Leblanc or I really want to master Akali and gain a lot of elo. Keep in mind, they are banned a lot, and there's a huge bullseye on their head. Like, these champions are very likely to be nerfed within 2 or 3 patches, I would say. So they're trying out all the preseason stuff, trying to get that balanced out, and then eventually they're going to circle back to some of these champions. Now, some of them have been tapped already. I think Akali got touched a little bit, Aatrox, Irelia. Those are kind of joke nerfs, but, you know, you at least know they're paying attention to those champions, the balance team, so... It's kind of a scary time to one-trick these, and really, you almost have to one-trick them to be very good at them. And, you know, so the argument could be made, well, why are they this high on the tier list then? Because they're oppressively powerful. They are overpowered. Really, really strong. And I think that even if you aren't the best LeBlanc player in the world, if you're still like an average to above average LeBlanc for your elo, you can still exploit people and gain a lot of elo. So if you want stuff that's like really easy to play, that's very consistent, you know, you can grab some of these 3, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Even Viktor to an extent. And Kassadin is pretty easy to play too. So, like, tier 2 is, like, kind of the safer, like, lower skill cap champs that can still have a high impact. And this is kind of, like, your higher skill cap champs that are, like, oppressively overpowered right now. So what is it about LeBlanc? I'm sure most people are familiar with why she's so strong. But the big issue with LeBlanc is that she can mimic her W. And I think that this needs to be what they nerf about her eventually. What did I just do? Not sure. This needs to be what they nerf about her eventually. So the deal is she can basically engage on somebody from... so she can jump 1200s. That's like a double flash pretty much without much risk. So unless they CC you instantly, if you double distortion... and then cast chains on somebody and miss, then you can go back off of Mimic. You can go back to your original distortion. So basically, you can jump 1200, so you can double flash with virtually no consequences in a lot of situations. So you can chase people down, hit them with that final Q to kill them. You can ethereal chains. So if you double dash with distortion and then throw the chains on them, it's 800 range. That's 2000 engage range with very little risk. So if you double distortion, chain somebody, hit the chain, you know, hit them with your Q, it goes off, they're probably going to be dead, and then you can just distortion all the way back, you know, 2,000 units. So, you know, you can just jump around all over the place, reposition like crazy, and if you're pretty good at mimicking those distortions, then you can, you know, bounce back to wherever you are. You can also wave clear pretty well later on in the game with the double distortion. Now, they did nerf this, you know, a little bit. They took 10 damage off of it, which is consequential, but at the same time, you're still going to be able to instantly wave clear. So, like, mimic distortion, you know, you're going to one-shot the wave pretty much. But look at these numbers, right? If you just jump right on somebody's face, like, no skill shots, like, they're within 600 range of you, and you jump on them and mimic them. I had a LeBlanc do this to me. All she had was... it was like a mana item and Sork boots. It was like nothing. Lost Chapter and Sork Boots. That's all she had. She did 900 damage to me. It was like level 7 or something like that when I was Nami. And I was like, what? Because I looked at her item. She was 0-3. And she had like Sork Boots and a Lost Chapter. I was like, okay, she's got a mana item and like 1 pin item. There's no way she's going to be able to kill me. I thought I could walk up and W her and put some poke in under tower because we were trying to pressure this tower out. Kills me in like less than 1 second. It was just distortion, mimic distortion, Q dead. Like auto dead. Because this does, and I don't even know how many points she had in distortion. It might have even been level 1 distortion. I mean, even level 1 distortion is going to do 225 damage plus 135% there. She may have had like 3 points in distortion. But either way, and then hitting them with that sigil for the extra damage, it's just like disgusting if you look at these AP ratios. Like the sigil, pretty much, if you're doing this correctly, if you're casting sigil on them and then using another ability to trigger it, then it's doing 310 damage with 80%, like a 0.8 ratio. This thing does up to 450 damage on Mimic's W with a 0.75. Like, these numbers are just wacky. So basically, now she is hard to, you have to figure out all these different combinations. If you do get hit by CC, you're gonna die. So she is challenging to play, but at the same time, she has a lot of safety because she has like 2 flashes, that end up being on like a 30-second cooldown after CDR. What? Like, it's just gross. She just one-shots people. She applies so much lane pressure. She can kill you. She can escape. She doesn't have a lot of CC, but she does have the ethereal chains to potentially slow people and hold them still. It's just basically people pick her because she has the insane single target burst damage with very little risk, especially if they don't have CC. So that makes her extremely dangerous. And then later on, she can have some decent wave clear if she uses the Mimic. Now, a lot of times she's not going to Mimic to wave clear, but, if she's trying to just push in the wave before she backs, it can be pretty good. So, she's not going to be able to roam as easily for the reasons I talked about to the side lane. She can still do it some, but she's just so good at 1v1ing other people in her lane that she may not even have to roam as much. She can just kill people. And, she can go invade the jungle with the jungler, just pop out, hop over walls, one-shot people, and hop back. It's just such extreme mobility that, and such super high single target damage off of, no items. And she scales really well with items, so she's just extremely strong. And I think that's what it is about her, is there's just almost no counterplay to her. She can use her mobility offensively, defensively. There's very few limitations. And she has such massive base damage and massive ratios that she's very difficult to deal with. So there are some champions that can counterplay her, like Lissandra to an extent, like Malzahar, that can hold her still and everyone just gang up on her. Her passive does help her evade some of the damage with her Mimicked Clone. That does buy her a little bit of time, but she's still very difficult to deal with. Now, she doesn't take towers particularly quickly, and she doesn't take objectives particularly quickly, but she's very good at what she does do. So I think that's still what you would do. And you just want to run, just Dark Harvest, Sudden Impact, Ghost Poro. I like Ghost Poro on her because she's not going to be stacking the Eyeball Collection as much as like an AoE person. It'll still be okay. But Ghost Poro allows you to get some extra vision on the side, so now you can have a Control Ward and a Ghost Poro down to watch both of your bushes, and that'll allow you to apply much more pressure and potentially get more kills in the lane, because you don't have to be as scared of the jungler if you take Ghost Poro. And then Ravenous Hunter for a little bit of healing, and then just Mana Flow Ban, extra mana, and Transcendence for that extra CDR later, so that you can have maxed out CDR if you get Ludens plus blue buff plus Transcendence. So pretty good build path. And then you just want to go Ludens, Morello, Deathcap. Pretty standard. There was back in the day, I wouldn't recommend going for the Gunblade anymore. That was a very specific build with her old kit before her rework got reverted. So if you're looking at an old guide from like a year or so ago, you might see Gunblade. Don't get that anymore. It's not as good. It was a very specific interaction between her heal, or between her Q, and the way that it counted as single target for the healing. So that allowed her to just have an obscene amount of healing to get through the laning phase back in the day. But they've changed it. It doesn't work that way anymore, so don't get Gunblade on her. I still see some people where it's very obvious they haven't ever played her, or they're looking at a guide from like years ago. Just don't do it. Just go for your standard AP items, and you'll be a lot better off. Okay, next up we have Akali. Now, Akali is kind of an interesting case because she's one of the most banned champions, if not the most banned champion in the mid lane. Let me see here. So I had this at silver. We can maybe move it up to gold here. So she's one of the most banned champions, but then she's also one of the lowest win rate champions. Yeah. Oh, 44% win rate. That I was like, is that her win rate? No, that's her ban rate. So she has a 58% ban rate. So that's, if it's not number one, it's got to be up there. Yeah, so she's the most banned champion. And the reason for this is she's extremely dangerous. Like, yes, there will be people that suck on her, but if it gets in the hand of someone who is good, she's very, very difficult to stop. So she's very annoying to play against also is why she's banned. But aside from just annoyance, she just has such high snowball potential off of just one or two items. So this Shroud gives her so much utility. It allows her to tower dive. It allows her to just basically get away from almost anything because it's very hard to get a hold of her there. She can use this just to get away if she has to. So she can use it like a flash, you know, to just dash away for 600. She can even do it twice. So yeah, you don't want to be using it that way. You want to be using it aggressively, but if you have to use it, it's just like an emergency escape. You can do that. Her Shuriken flip can also help her clear some distance. So she does jump backward. You can jump over walls with this. So, you know, if someone is like chasing you in the river, you can flip over a wall and get away. So there's a lot of utility. She has so many escapes. She's so slippery. She ends up getting pretty decent wave clear, especially once you get rank 5. So once you max this out, you get an extra 33% to minions and monsters. So pretty good wave clear. I mean, you can spam this about 3 times, and you'll almost instantly clear a wave once you get some, once you get a few stats behind you. So that's super handy. She doesn't require mana, so you don't have to get a mana item, which is nice. Because don't forget with those mana items, you're paying gold for that, right? When you get something like a Ludens with 500 mana on it, you're paying about 700 gold value for that. She doesn't have to buy that because she's got energy. So especially for faster fights, she's not going to need that. So it's like an extra 700 gold in her pocket. So she basically starts with like a free double kill just because she has energy instead of mana, because she doesn't have to get that. Now she can get blue, which I think increases your energy as well a little bit. But she could also give her blue off to people like a Mumu who might need it more in the jungle because she's not going to need it as much. So that's just a small utility thing about her that a lot of people underestimate. But yeah, I mean, just like really good damage here. She's got sustain. She has a ton of mobility. Like this passive does just an insane amount of damage. So you have to be good to the sense where whenever you cast an ability, you need to go outside of the range and then be able to close back in. So using the Shuriken usually gets you outside of range so you can follow up. Just like using like 5-point strike at maximum range to get the extra healing and then stepping back out. It's conveniently at 500, and you have to step out, what is it, 550? 500. So it's like if you do this at perfect max range, if you get the timing correct, you'll get healed off of it. You just step back like one step, you'll get your comma, and then you can go back in and threaten them with the comma. So you can use your comma, you know, with your perfect execution, deal your damage to them, you'll fly through them, go, you know, get another comma, fly back at them. So pretty high skill cap. Pretty fun to play, tons of damage, has lots of unfair things in her kit, multiple escapes, 3 different things that you can use to escape, 4 if you count being able to use this twice. Sustain, burst damage, like very, very powerful single item power spike off of Gunblade is just disgusting on her. So very scary. Just if they do get a hold of you, if they stun lock you, they can kill you. There are some champions that are pretty good against her when she's in the smoke. So something like Lissandra that can just cast AoE stuff, you know, with her W and with her Q. If you get revealed, you know, she might be able to stun you up or blow you up. Another one would be like Malzahar, you know, when he can throw the Q in there. If he reveals you, he can ult you. So there are some potential counter picks to her out there with that Shroud, but she has a lot of outplay potential. Very, very powerful, very strong. Still great itemization. Still going to be an amazing threat. So, you know, very low reliability, super difficult to play, but really high scaling. And you definitely get rewarded for being good with her. Now, she's someone that may not get nerfed as much just because her win rate's low. I mean, it's hard as Riot to nerf something that's got like a 45% win rate. They do it. You know, they did it to Azir and Ryze. But, you know, she's got a bullseye on her head. So keep that in mind, that there's a lot of people like TF Blade abusing things like Akali and Irelia in a huge spotlight at the top of the ladder. You have people in pro play complaining about her all the time. She gets picked or banned a lot in pro play. So it's up to you if you want to learn her, but very, very strong, very powerful, really fun for a lot of reasons. Okay, and then we have kind of our bruisers. So we have kind of our control mage up here. We have our two sort of assassin picks, AP assassins. Then we have bruisers. So even the tier 1 is pretty diverse in champions and what they do. So we have Aatrox. He got nerfed on the last patch. Now his ultimate lasts a mere 10 seconds. So all you have to do is kite him for 10 seconds, no problem, through his Ghost Blade, through his like 2 dashes off of his E and his 3 dashes off of his Q. You can kite this guy, right? No problem. You kite him for 10 seconds, then kill him. This champion's stupid. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he should be closer. I mean, any of these could be number 2. I still think Karthus is number 1 just because he's so consistent. But a lot of these could be number 2, right? And so Aatrox, just like, the damage is just so disgusting. 450% AD ratio on his Q? Yeah, you have to hit all 3 of them. And I'm not even sure if this includes the 50% bonus damage off the stun. But yeah, basically, he heals a ton. Off of his Umbral Dash, he gets 20% healing. Post-mitigation physical damage he deals. So this is not just his autos. This is anything. This is his Qs, you know, his ultimate, his Umbral Dash, his Infernal Chains, everything. Gives him the extra damage. Even if he gets Electrocute or Dark Harvest, his passive, all of these are gonna do physical damage. I think Dark Harvest does adaptive damage. Might do magic only. I'd have to... adaptive damage, yes, that'll do physical damage too. So yeah, he's got a ton of healing in his kit. He has a ton of harass, kind of like Akali. He doesn't use mana either, so you don't have to itemize into mana. He just beats people down. He's going to be able to duel almost anybody, like a squishy, a tank, doesn't matter. He does a lot of percentage-based damage here. This is a 25-second cooldown, but if you're constantly hitting people with Qs every time that's up, it's probably closer to like a 15-second cooldown. So it stops people from healing and shielding. I mean, whenever he gets this passive going, but yeah, he just does a ton of damage over and over again. And then the World Ender, pretty much you can use him like an engaged tank because he has so much sustain. He gets things like Black Cleaver, Sterix Gauge, and so it makes him very resilient. He gets a lot of healing. And this does not have diminishing returns if it hits multiple champions in a fight. So if you use a Q and you hit like 3 champions, you're going to be healing for like 20% of everybody that gets hit with that Q. Don't forget that. This is not single target. So if you're hitting 3 people with this, this is effectively like 1350% AD on this ability if you hit all 3 people with this. And that means that you're going to be doing like thousands of damage in a team fight. And you're going to be healing for hundreds and hundreds of healing as well. And this is not even if you get like a Spirit Visage or something like that. There's just so many situations. He's a huge bully in lane. The laning phase is extended, so he gets some more playtime with whoever he's up against in the laning phase because of the changes to plating. So now he gets even more time to start scaling up. So he's good in the early game. He's good in the mid game. He's good in the late game. He's great at split pushing. He's pretty good at solo fighting. There are some of these other ones, you know, like an Akali that's fed should be able to beat him if he's fed. A Jax that's fed, and Irelia that's fed can probably beat him. But he's just so versatile. And one of the things that sets him apart, you know, from the other champions that I just mentioned is he can run in and just like start a fight and just face tank a lot of stuff and do a lot of damage, grab a lot of cooldowns from the enemy, and your team can go in and clean up. So you don't need a proper tank if you have an Aatrox. You know, you don't need something like a Malachi or an Ornn or something like that because this guy does a zillion damage and he also takes a long time to kill, especially when his ult's ticking and he's just going to revive. So it's just, it feels so bad when he pops Ghostblade and runs into your backline. and he's got a few items. You know, it's like, well, what do I do? Do I use all my cooldowns to kill him? He's just going to revive here in a second. I'm not going to have anything left for, you know, the Kai'Sa that's coming in on the back line. Or I'm not going to have anything left for, you know, the Xin Zhao that's about to follow up and hit my 80 carry. So it just puts you in a real predicament. It's like he almost always has a GA. So very, very gross. I just have him just a little bit lower because I don't think that his single target assassination is as sort of guaranteed as something like a Leblanc. And I don't think he scales quite as well in like a one-on-one scenario as Akali, although I would argue he's probably more useful in teamfights than Akali is. So anyways, I think he's very strong. You can use just the standard Dark Harvest with him because you're going to be able to get people below 50% a lot in lane and harvest a lot of darkness in the laning phase. So I think he's going to be really strong. You can go ulti hunter now with him as well, and so that's going to lower the cooldown on all of his stuff. You can get second wind, which will help you sustain through things even more than you already do, and you can get demolished so that whenever you run the enemy out of lane, you're guaranteed to get a plate. Just proc that demolish, grab that plate, get your gold, take it to the bank. Rinse and repeat every like minute and a half or 2 minutes. You just go in there, go hard, run them out of lane, start cracking those plates, and just go at it. Now, one thing also is because he's so inherently tanky, he can get these kind of bruisery items that are ridiculous on him. And he can actually afford to go Ghostblade and still be pretty tanky off of his first item. And that gives him so much extra ability just to run down people and get in their face with the Q. Or if you want to split push with him to get away if they send like 3 people at you. So, very, very strong champion, absurdly powerful. If he's not banned, you can definitely take him. Just like Akali, you can flex him to top lane. You can go mid lane with him. He's really, really strong right now. So if you like the bruisery, engage, get in their face, let's team fight, but you also want to be invulnerable in the laning phase and be able to split push later against most champions, Aatrox might be your guy. So yeah, very powerful. I think his skill cap is probably... He still requires some skill, but I think that he's probably a little bit lower than Leblanc, Akali, and Irelia. So if you want to play one of these OP champions, but you don't have enough time to learn them, or you just don't quite have the mechanics, the reflexes, you know, the game sense or whatever to pull off some of these other ones, I think that Aatrox is one of the easier to play of this kind of quad OP section here. So that could be something to consider as well. He's also an AD option, so that can be good or bad. If you have a lot of AP on your team, which AP is kind of coming back, you know, if you have a Karthus top lane and you've got like a Gragas in the jungle or something and you want some more AD, he could be good. But that can also be kind of bad if you have a lot of AD. So if your top lane is running like, I don't know, Camille or something like that. Camille does some true damage, that helps. But, you know, if your jungler is Xin Zhao, your top lane's running Camille or Gangplank or something like that, maybe not Aatrox middle. It's going to be too much AD. And that's kind of the problem with Talon and Zed as well, is that they're AD, and really you want an AP in the mid lane still, most of the time. But that could hold him back. But realistically, you know, you're not picking him for the mega heavy damage. You're just picking him because he's immobile. He does do mega damage, but even if they have a lot of armor, you're still going to just disrupt so much in team fights that he's still going to be useful. Okay, Irelia is the next one, and I'll speed this up a little bit. I know this is taking a long time. I haven't done a mid lane tier list in a while, though. Irelia is still going to be overpowered. They did nerf the 5 movement speed on her, so watch out for that. But, I mean, she's just absurd. I'm sure everyone's played against her at this point. She has true damage, you know, with her Ionian Fervor. I think it heals her also. That she has something that heals a little bit, I think. She has so many different abilities. But either way, like, this gives her a ton of true damage. It does a lot of damage against shields. Champions like Janna are coming back into the fold, so being able to break through the shields is useful. What are you looking at? How that works?
Look at how it looks.
What do you... Oh, the Christmas stuff?
Yeah,
Oh, they're not going to be able to see. The camera's not that good. Well, that's true, yeah. I need to...
You need to put away your...
I know. I'm just... got a lot of stuff to do. But... Anyways. Oh, this is what heals her Q. So yeah, it heals her for a lot. 20% AD. Is that every time she Dashes the enemy, dealing physical damage, applying healing herself for 20% of her total AD. So yes, that does heal her a ton, especially because she gets resets on kills, so she can just zip around and kill the whole minion wave pretty much and heal for, you know, a casual 120 or something every wave. So she's a nightmare to lane against. You know, this does a lot of extra attack speed when she's able to trigger it. She can charge this up on the wave. For every champion, her abilities, or if she hits at least one non-champion, stacking up to 4 times. So yeah, she just stacks this up, goes to work. Like, the main problem with Irelia is that this Q just has no cooldown on it. Like, you get a full reset. I think a good way to balance this would be if she had some delay on it, like a 2-second delay, or even like a 1.5 seconds, kind of like Dark Harvest. That would give people more time to maybe interact with her before she could do this again. So if it reset the cooldown to 2 seconds, just so she couldn't instantly, like, clear a minion wave for free, or she couldn't instantly, like, double proc or triple proc her Q on somebody, just zip, 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 they're dead. I think that would probably be the best way to balance her, is just limit her mobility a little bit. I don't mind her getting the resets. It's cool that she has sort of those combos, but I don't think she should be able to instantly cast 2 or 3 of these at the same time so easily. Right, and especially if you're hitting multiple people with Vanguard's Edge, like you hit 3 people in a fight, you can zip to all 3 of them. Or if you hit multiple people with Flawless Duet, like there are multiple like AoE things that can hit a lot of people in team fights that give her these resets. So she is on the challenging side kind of to use. You have to get used to like getting your combos right to get these resets. You really need to be able to hit your Flawless Duet, but still extremely strong. You know, you just go Conquer. Does a ton of extra true damage. Remember, Conquer also applies to your abilities, so that's going to make this, your Q, do true damage as well, to an extent. And, yeah, so she just goes Trinity, Sterix, and Titanic Hydra. I guess you'd go, like, you'd probably go Tiamat, Trinity, finish your Titanic, then Sterix. You're going to have a ton of HP, a ton of damage. Don't forget that Trinity, every time you use one of these Blade Surges, is going to allow you to get another Trinity proc. And once your Conquer is going, then that's going to allow you to, you know, do extra true damage on the Trinity procs as well, I believe. So yeah, I mean, her kit's just too good. Does a ton of damage, gives her a ton of survivability, lots of mobility, excellent duelist, lots of pressure in lane. I mean, she can be CC'd and killed, sort of. But at the same time, she has a defensive button here that just says basically, like, you can't hurt me anymore. Pretty much. And I don't even think you can crowd control this. Yeah, it can't be interrupted by crowd control. So if you press this at the right time, they can't even CC you out of this. You just cast all your abilities or whatever, do a ton of damage. They're going to hit you with something really big. Just do your Defiant Dance, block all their, you know, huge damage cooldown, and you're good. This will work against, like, a Karthus ult or something like that. So yeah, lots and lots of tools in her toolkit. She's just very versatile. She can get things like Hex Drink if she needs to. She's already going to have Sterix, which is going to be a really good boon against like burst champions. So very disgusting. Highly consider playing her if you're so inclined to win a lot of games and you want to learn her. I mean, like, Aatrox and Irelia really violate, like, fundamental rule of League of Legends, which is you shouldn't have something that's highly mobile, very tanky, and puts out super high damage. That's never been balanceable. It never works out well, and they are in clear violation of that. So I think they're going to get nerfed more soon, so keep that in mind. But on this patch, fire away. She's going to be gross. Okay. So that's tier 1. I think if you can play any of these, you should definitely play these. I think these are stronger than most of the other picks, but other ones can be very good, especially in counter pick scenarios, or if you don't have a lot of experience on these. Because I think these 4 all have a sub 50% win rate, because a lot of people just are not good on them, and they get outplayed, and they're really bad when you're behind. Like, a lot of them just don't have a lot of utility if they're behind. There's some, but like if you're Aatrox and you're 0-5, you know, you can't just run into the enemy backline because they're just going to evaporate you and then just kill you again after you respawn. Or like Akali, you know, if they CC you before you can shroud and they blow you up before that, then, you know, obviously that's going to be bad. So a lot of these, if you fall behind, aren't very useful. Now, Karthus is the exception once again, because he can just power farm if he dies. And if he dies, if he gets caught out, he can still do most of his stuff. So Karthus is just really overpowered, but these other ones are very strong, as long as you get some experience on them and don't feed, they can be good. Okay, so these are kind of like your safer options, not as much at the top end, but they're going to be more consistent. And so these are kind of the things that I recommend if you are just trying to transition over, just learn mid lane, where you just don't have a lot of experience on the other ones. These are still definitely very serviceable. They're not going to be as much of a hard solo carry. You're probably not going to go like 15-2 on most of these champions, with the exception of maybe Kassadin. You know, but you're going to be consistent. You're going to put up numbers. If you fall a little behind in CS or, you know, some other areas, then you can still perform pretty well. So Kassadin, you definitely could argue that Kassadin should be up here. I think he's the one person who could sneak in here. If I had 6 people at tier 1, I'd definitely put him in there. But I always try to be consistent and just do 5 at each tier so that it's nice and readable. I always hate those tier lists where they're like, oh, tier 2 has 15 champions in it. It's like, well, that's not helpful. Why even make the tier list, right? If you're just going to say everything's good, then there's no point in, you know, making the tier list. So, anyways, Kassadin, super strong, pretty good beneficiary of the changes as well. Now, they did specifically try to nerf Kassadin in the patch notes. Like, they nerfed Fleet Footwork, the AP ratio on it, and they nerfed Ravenous Hunter almost exclusively because of Kassadin. But he got some other toys as well. So Dark Harvest, very good on him because he is like anything that can clean up fights, Dark Harvest is going to be good. So you're going to get those resets, you're going to go back in, do a lot of damage. So Dark Harvest is going to be great on him. He can still get Taste of Blood. He can still get Ravenous Hunter. And then I think a lot of people are switching over to Second Wind on him and Demolish. So you still have 3 things that are going to be able to heal you up in the early game. You can still take Corrupting Potion and be strong. You still have Dark Harvest. And if you run people out of lane, you have those Demolish procs. Or if you roam, you get a kill, you're going to have Demolish, so it's likely you're going to be able to get one of those plates off of the bot lane tower, even if they get one of your plates mid lane. So I still think he has a free pass through the laning phase because of Corrupting Potion, Taste of Blood, Ravenous, and Second Wind. You know, they did nerf his Time Warp Tonic, but whatever, that's okay. And I mean, if you make it through the laning phase, most people know this about Kassadin. If he gets that Rod of the Ages, he is extremely difficult to deal with, even off of just one item. Now, some people are going Archangels plus Rod. I've seen the trend lately has been complete Rod first. So you get that stacking, so you get that health, most importantly. And then get your tier, and then start stacking for Archangels. Because you're not, like, the mana is useful. You do get some mana regen off of this. But the big thing is the health. Because he gets a lot of effective health off of his shield. So what I mean by that is whenever he does damage with his Q, he gets this shield. And so the more Qs you can get off, the more shields you're going to get, the more health you have, the more Qs you're going to be able to cast before you die. So it gives you a greater amount of effective health. Because if you Q once and then they blow you up before you're able to Q again, you're losing a lot of potential effectiveness off of that Q. So that's why health is so effective on him, is because he gets this reduced damage from magic damage, and he gets this shield that helps keep him up even longer. So he becomes very difficult to kill with AP, and he sort of starts to violate that rule again with Irelia and Aatrox. Huge damage, tons of mobility, becomes pretty difficult to kill and tanky. So he's kind of a freak of balancing as well, and he always has been. But he's starting to come back. A lot of it's because mages are coming back. So he's a pretty solid pick if they have any sort of, you know, AP mage, right? So pretty good against Karthus to an extent. Now, if they try to channel Karthus' ult and he's not dead, so if someone's trying to just channel their ult, like step back to their tower, think they're being sneaky and channel their ult to kill bot lane, you can rift walk forward and hit him with a Q and interrupt Karthus' channel. So that makes him a pretty good matchup against Karthus. And the fact he's going to have a lot of health, and he's going to have the magic shield, and he takes reduced damage from Karthus, makes him a pretty decent counter pick into him. Right? Now, he's still going to get pushed in and out-farmed by Karthus hard, but if any assassin's going to be able to step up to him, then I think Kassadin's going to be the man for the job. So they recently lowered the cooldown on his ult now to where it's only 2 seconds at the end, and it does a lot of damage. You know, the max damage, and it's going to start costing you a lot of mana, but it's like 360 damage with plus 6% of your max mana and 80% of your AP. So, he's very strong. I mean, he has nice trading in lane with the Null Sphere, he can do decent damage to towers because he has an auto attack reset, so not insane, you know. But basically, he gets through the laning phase. He's very good against other assassins. He has high mobility. He can roam. He can stop people like Karthus from channeling things. He can stop Katarina from channeling her ult. So it's not as powerful as this. It used to flat out silence people. It doesn't do that anymore, but it can still stop channeling. So he's a menace. I mean, he's very strong. He gets that rod, tier, whatever. He can start blowing people up. So he is definitely the type of champion that can hard carry, that can go 15-2 if they don't camp you mercilessly. But be very careful first picking him, because there are AD options that are available that are pretty strong in this meta. Most notably, things like Aatrox and Irelia that can give him a really hard time. Then, of course, you have stuff like, you know, Zed and Talon are still pretty, like, respectable that are good, too. Because that shield is not going to really do anything, right? It's not a full shield. It's a magic shield. So it only blocks magic damage, and this only reduces magic damage. So if they counterpick you with an AD pick, you could potentially be in trouble. And don't forget, Akali, like, a lot of her stuff does AD damage, too. So, so yeah, but he is very good against a lot of other AP champs. So he's going to, if you see a Viktor, if you see like an Ahri or a Leblanc, Karthus, he's going to be a pretty good pick. So he's a decent blind pick, but it's definitely safer if you know they have AP. Okay, Viktor's another one. He's kind of the opposite. This is the anti-AD pick. So if they pick something that's a melee AD champion like Irelia, Aatrox, Zed, Talon, he's your worst nightmare. Like, he is very, very good against AD. Not specifically because of anything in particular in his kit, but because of how he itemizes. So he's going to go basically just Ninja Tabby, Iceborne Gauntlet, and just get the perfect Hex Core. And if he gets that, he does a lot of damage. A lot. And he has this repeatable shield. So if it's a long fight, he's probably going to win. So, you know, when he gets perfect Hex Core, I'm not sure the timing on this. He'd probably get it around like level 9 or so. He's going to get, you know, 90 AP and all this other stuff. Is very good. It upgrades all of his abilities. So this is really what changed that's made him very strong. This is a buff. I don't remember when this was. It was a while ago. But like, basically he casts the Q on you. I'm sure most of you have seen this before. It's going to give him a shield. It does really high damage too. I mean, 260 damage with a 0.95 AP ratio and a 100% AD ratio. That's not bonus AD, that's total AD. So he has base AD, right? So even though you aren't building AD, you know, you're still going to have like 70 attack damage. So, you know, and I guess a lot of that is because this is auto attack based, because he uses the auto attack for this next thing. But still, that's, you know, if he has 70 here, that's what, 330 and a 95 ratio. If you have like 100 AP, that's well north of 400 damage that you're doing off of this. On an ability that ends up being on a 4-second cooldown, that also gives him a shield for 24% of his AP. So that'd be 24 plus 12.5% of his max mana. If he has like 1500 mana, you know, you're looking at it like probably a 220 to 250 shield at least. At least. On a 4-second cooldown. So something that does 400 damage, gives you a 200 shield, gives you 30% extra movement speed, and so 400 damage, 200 shield, 40% extra movement speed. Does that sound alright? Oh, and by the way, if you have something with a Sheen proc, you proc Sheen off of this too. And it procs Kleptomancy, because you're doing auto attacks. Like, he's just so gross. Like, it does so much damage. Now, his range is kind of short on this. It's 600, so that's why, really, you should use him against melee champs. If you try to go up and do this to LeBlanc, she might just one-shot you. So, he does not like getting bursted out, you know, with really high burst damage. But things that are, like, sustained damage, damage over time, are very good. And the reason he's so good against the AD is you can get the Ninja Tabby. You get a shield, which makes your armor even more effective. And because, don't forget, with shields, people often forget this who don't play shielding supports, that scales with armor. So if you have 100 armor and you get a 200 shield, it takes 400 attack damage to break that shield, not 200. Okay, things don't do true damage to shields. In some other games they do, or like I guess with Irelia they do, but for most people, for most champions, it gets armor and magic resist also apply to the shield. So that means every time you get this 200 shield, if you get to 100 armor, which is not hard to do with like Ninja Tabby, Iceborne Gauntlet, you get to 100 armor, then it's going to take 400 physical damage to break that shield. So it just makes trading with him almost impossible. He also creates that little icy zone, so that people can't really escape from him very easily, because he gets a ton of movement speed and he, you know, slows everybody around him. He has this gravity field, so in team fights, it's just really disruptive. It can slow people, like force people to move. It's really annoying, and he gets pretty good wave clear, you know, once he gets the aftershock on here. That's a lot of damage. That's 410 damage with 120% ratio. What? So this is like 400 something damage. This is 400 something damage. It's on a slightly longer cooldown. And then there's his ultimate, which is a 300% AP ratio. What? That's if they stand in it the whole time. But guess what? If they're slowed with Iceborne Gauntlet, they're probably going to be standing in it for quite a while. And so he's just gross. He's a great duelist. He's always had a lot of damage, right? So he's always been good on like 3 items. The problem is he's been too slow to get to those items. Well, now with Siphon Power, you have a huge bully potential in there, especially against AD champions. And people have discovered he's very good with Kleptomancy, because you have this spell you can spam over and over again. You're going to be able to walk up and trade with them without getting hit back. And now you can actually get 2 Klepto procs in there. So you can attack them once, you know, to get the discharge. Then you can attack them again while you have the shield and get 2 Klepto items. So now you're farming even more gold, even more items. You're getting health pots, you're getting mana pots, you're getting extra wards. So you can continue to be aggressive, go for these trades, just every time that shield is up. And he's almost impossible to deal with. Unless you have an AP champion that can get on him and blow him up quickly, then he's very difficult to deal with. Most of all, once again, because of Iceborne and just that specific interaction, how much AD or how much armor it gives him and mana. Don't forget that mana scales with his Q, and yeah, it's just his Q, but that gives him a bigger shield when he has that mana as well. So he's just an awesome counter pick if they have an AD champion, or just like a mild control mage that may not have enough to completely burst him out early on. So if you're against something like, I don't know, usually short range champs, like a Katarina maybe. Katarina, Zed, Talon, Irelia, Aatrox. A lot of those champs, he's going to be pretty good. So, yeah, great champion, great utility, awesome dueling, great fighting in the laning phase. He doesn't roam very well, which is fine. He does have great wave clear, though, so if you try to roam on him, he's going to get a lot of plates. Traditionally played a bit more in the top lane, but I still think he's serviceable in the mid lane, particularly against some of these low-range champions up there. So he's another flex pick threat that can be good. But yeah, going to be a strong champ. So if you want to go with him, I'd go with Klepto, Magical Footwear, Dematerializer, Cosmic. I like the Footwear. It saves you 300 gold. You don't really need the move speed like super early because you get it off your Q. It's helpful, but saving the 300 gold is going to let you complete your perfect hex core even faster. You really want to get to the tier 2 hex core like ASAP, and they did lower the gold on that a couple of patches ago as well. But the tier 1 is going to give you the crazy like trading off of your shield. It's going to give you the movement speed and the extra shield amount. But then the tier 2 is what gives you that wave clear, right? That's what's going to empower your E to really like be able to put some pressure on towers in the mid game. So you want to get to that as fast as possible. Materializer, very good. And then just Mana Flow Band, give you extra mana, extra scaling. Don't forget this gives you flat mana too, which is going to scale with his shield. And then Transcendence, just to make sure you get that extra CDR, because you're going to get 20% off of Iceborne Gauntlet. And then you'll get 10% off of this. And then if you get blues, you'll get another 10%. So really, really good. Great abuser of Klepto. Some people have said, like, try out Shield Bash. I just don't think it's worth it because nothing else in that tree is going to be good for him. I mean, I guess Revitalize is going to give him a bigger shield. I guess you could go like Second Wind or something maybe. But I just think that like Mana Flow, just getting that extra flat mana is good, and getting to Transcendence in the mid game is going to be really handy as well. So I'd probably rather have that. I don't think Shield Bash gives you enough of a benefit to matter. It will give you some extra like auto attack, empowered auto damage. I mean, maybe it's worth it. It does give you some extra armor, some extra empowered autos. So maybe it's worth it as a secondary. I haven't tried it. I just did not see a lot of people on pro builds getting it. But you can try it out. It's probably not going to matter that much. I just think that Mana Flow is really, really sweet for him. And then Transcendence is pretty legit too. You could also do Absolute Focus if you really wanted to. But anyways, Malzahar is going to be another really strong champion. I really like Malzahar. He's a nice, well-rounded champ. Like, he's hard to engage on because he's got that shield. So any sort of like hook champions, he's going to be pretty good against. He's good against assassins, and he's great with junglers. So especially if you're duoed with a jungler, he's going to be awesome. So, you know, he can lock down things like Akali, Leblanc, Kassadin to a lesser extent. But he pushes waves really, really well. And he pressures towers surprisingly well, because don't forget, his minions actually attack towers. So the tower is going to prioritize and kill them pretty quickly. But just being able, like, it's very underestimated, I think, that these little minions, when you bring them out, there's 3 of them, they get to do some extra damage to these towers, right? Pretty decent chunk. Now, it's a bonus AD, so you're not going to have a lot of bonus AD. But even if you have, like, 100 AP, you know, early on, even if you only put 1 point in this, which I think is common, you know, level 7 is 26 plus 12, that's 38 damage. You have 100 AP, that's 20 more, that's 58 damage. There's 3 of them. You know, that's 174 damage to towers every time they attack. And they soak shots. So that's going to, like, soak up 3 tower shots, which is going to, like, allow those minions to stay up even longer to do more damage. Now, if you can cast, like, if it's focusing a cannon minion, and then you cast this, these minions are going to go to town on that tower, because it's not going to be able to switch off the cannon minion until it kills the cannon, and so these are going to get to do a lot of damage to towers. So he does threaten towers really quickly, he does threaten dragons and barons really quickly, because of this Void Swarm. Very strong with Liandry's in that respect. Pretty low cooldown ult. I do think that, you know, I do have Predator on here. You know, I think that Dark Harvest is probably better. Just because with Liandry's, especially when you get that, like, doing that extra damage, kind of like with Karthus, if somebody dies in a team fight, you're going to do that Dark Harvest, and then if anyone else is burning from Liandry's, they're going to take that Dark Harvest boom as well. Now, I'm not sure if multiple people are burning from Liandry's, if they all take that damage, like, so if you have, like, 3 people burning from Liandry's, they're all under 50%, somebody dies, you get the Dark Harvest reset. If it triggers on all of them at the same time, or if it's just one, I don't know. But either way, still going to be very strong. You can go, you know, Taste of Blood, Ultimate Hunter to gain a little bit of, or I guess Ultimate Hunter so you can cast your ult more. I mean, you could maybe go for something like the Coup de Grace Presence of Mind if you want, but I think that Dematerializer so you could push faster and Cosmic Insight are where it's at. So I think he actually could be, I don't see this, but I could see him kind of like Karthus as being a candidate to go for the Hunter's Talisman early on. I think a lot of people just go Doran's Ring, but the Hunter's Talisman's looking pretty good for similar reasons. Like, you can summon up a bunch of minions, cast your E on, like, the Raptor camp, focus fire it out, and just spread that all around, you know, smite the big one, just spam all of your spells and farm it really quickly, and then just get, like, 8 mana per second to just have, like, infinite mana. You can go contest Scuttle. You take dragons really, like, pretty easily. Not as fast as Karthus, but pretty fast. So I could see him with, like, a Hunter's Talisman, like, refillable start, for example, or Hunter's Talisman, like, 3-pot start. So I haven't seen that a lot, but it seems to fit the same kind of profile that Karthus does, which is just run around and power farm stuff, and then you've got extra utility. So with Malzahar, that's the lockdown CC. With Karthus, of course, it's his ultimate. But I think he could be very, very strong right now. He does have a pretty high win rate. He's pretty consistent. There is some skill to be said about hitting your Qs and, like, getting resets on your E with your ult and with your Q and timings and stuff like that. But by and large, he's pretty easy to play. Let's be honest. You just throw your goo on the wave, cast your minions, cast Q on it. Everybody resets, power farms. So that can let you rotate if you do want to rotate and try to make those plays. You know, while you're rotating through the jungle, you can gain a lot of your mana back. So I think he's pretty good. I mean, he's great against assassins in particular. He's got nice lockdown pick potential CCs. He does take objectives really quickly. So I think he's kind of like just a worse Karthus, but he's better against assassins than Karthus. He's similar in terms of like push plus utility, like power farmer. But just a little bit lower just because he doesn't have the raw, like, eye-popping damage that Karthus is going to have. He doesn't abuse the runes as much. But he's still going to be pretty legit. I think, especially if you're kind of auto-filled, he's one of the best auto-filled mid laners because you can just AFK farm and push, and then just wait till the jungler comes and press R, and they're probably going to die. So, I think he's pretty legit. Lissandra is another new one who's kind of the new hotness. Now, I haven't, like, fully sort of studied why she's getting picked. I know she was popular in the top lane, I think against melee champs, kind of like Viktor. Now, one thing that she can do that a lot of these mid laners can't do is start team fights really well. So she can, like, E into team fights, W, ult herself, and just cause a lot of disruption on the back line. Then she can Zhonya's. So, she does have that going for her. And in team fights, if somebody dies, she gets those Icy Thralls, which do a ton of extra damage now. This does a lot. You know, like level 9 is 280 damage with a 0.3 AoE, and it slows everybody. So she's just super disruptive in team fights. It just doesn't allow people to just be where they want to be. They have to, like, reposition and split up to try to avoid her. And she also doubles as having this Frozen Tomb to pick off single targets. So if your jungler comes, she can play the pick game and kill people like that. But then she can also, you know, has a really good team fight. Now, her wave clear is not as good as something like Malzahar. It's pretty good with these shards. They're on a fairly low cooldown. Her mana costs are still going to be just a bit higher. Because remember with Malzahar, like, you can just press 1 E and it's going to affect everybody in the wave, right? If you're getting, like, if they're killing and resetting and things like that, and you're getting some mana refunded every time one of those little minions dies, and so she's still pretty good. I don't think she can power farm the jungle, potentially, and, like, it's a slightly shorter range. Her spells are very short range. That's one thing to keep in mind. It's like, Malzahar's is 650 on his ult, and it's still pretty low range. I think it's 650. I closed it, but it's something longer than 550. This is, like, auto attack range. So really, to get this close to most mages, you're going to have to use your E to get in, and that means you're not going to have an escape. So if the jungler shows up to counter gank you whenever you're going in, like, that can be a problem. So she's a little bit less safe in that regard. Her damage is also lower. So, like, her ratios are pretty poor. It's like a 0.6 here. Her Q's like a 0.7, which is, like, okay. Ring of Frost is only a 0.3 with 190 base damage, so she still is good. She's going to take Aftershock as well still. So she's basically like, if you need someone who can start a fight from the mid lane that's like a disruptor, basically a tank, like a pseudo tank, that can go in there, disrupt, cause a lot of CC, and you're trusting your team to have a bunch of the rest of the damage, then she can be good. But I personally think from the mid lane right now, you just want really high damage champs that can wave clear and sort of make plays. I mean, she can make plays, but she's okay. I don't feel comfortable putting her tier 1. I mean, maybe. She's a lot more consistent than some of those other tier 1 champs, but I just don't think you're going to be able to hard carry like 1v9 as much with her as you could with other champions. So good utility pick, pretty good choice. You know, once again, if you're sort of auto-filled or if you trust your team to have enough damage, she can be good. And the final one in tier 2 is going to be Ahri. Ahri could be tier 1. I mean, she is very consistent. They did buff her a while ago to where her charm was 1.4 seconds, which is quite a long amount of CC for something that you only get 1 point in. So that was a huge deal, and, you know, she has pretty good wave clear and pretty good damage on her Q. You know, 280 with a 0.7 and half of it being true damage is very nice. That's true damage is almost like double damage. Not quite, but it's a good way to think of it. So this really does closer to like 400 damage. 350 to 400 damage a lot of the time. And then Foxfire allows you to add in a little bit of extra damage too. She's just like kind of your jack of all trades. Like, she's not the highest damage assassin. She's not like, you know, doesn't have the best wave clear, doesn't have the best scaling in the game. But she's just solid, you know. She has 3 flashes to reposition to maybe hit someone on the back line. If you get in trouble, you're going to be able to get away. Pretty good single target damage, pretty good AoE. So she's just a very consistent pick. And I think that makes her another good sort of auto-fill champ. So it's going to be a bit harder to sort of 1v9 carry with her, but I think that she can still be pretty powerful, and overall she has a high win rate. And again, yeah, she's got almost a 54% win rate just because she is very consistent. So I think she's solid. Final few picks here, and then we'll go ahead and end it. I know this is super long. I'll have timestamps in the description. Zoe, I think, is kind of making a comeback. I think the control mages are sort of on the up and up. Now, being able to trigger Dark Harvest is very good on her, just because she has, like, her engage, or, like, where she can fight and try to make a play can happen, like, you know, once every 30 seconds or so, or maybe even faster with her ultimate. Her ultimate plus her bubble is probably, like, every 15 seconds. She'll get a good shot to try to make a play with her. And so I think that's really good just for someone who has low cooldowns on all of her abilities. You can get those Dark Harvest resets. She still does eye-popping, like, one-shot type of damage. A lot of people forgot about her. They did, like, nerf kind of her ridiculousness on her her passive doing so much damage and the Spell Thieves doing not as much damage, but she's still good. She's still good. She does have a weakness to assassins, but now that kind of there are some more kind of control mages walking around, you've got your Irelias, your Aatroxes. Those are not control mages, but they're slow and they can't get on her as easily. And then, you know, Karthus, pretty, like, okay against Karthus, I guess. She's all right. I mean, that's why she's in tier 3, right? She's not, like, insane. But if you're good on her, I think she's starting to get some more potential because she can get those Dark Harvest resets. It does help her one-shot potential on people. Especially because she has a hard time, like, I guess she could trigger Electrocute, which is what she was doing, but Dark Harvest is much nicer. Especially if you're just, like, using that Q, you know, max range over a wall or something to try to finish somebody off. And she still has all of her utility, right? She can still get summoners, so she's going to be picking up a lot of ignites. She can grab things like Redemption or Proto Belt. Her wave clear has definitely been impacted from... I forgot what they nerfed in terms of wave clear. It might have been either more Sparkles or Paddle Star, but she's still going to be good. Still has one-shot pick potential, really good poke potential, very good at sieging. You know, if she just gets to sit there and just spam Qs over a wall at the enemy team while you're sieging, she's eventually going to get somebody and probably one-shot them later in the game. So she's just a pest. So now that games have kind of slowed down a little bit in the early game to give her some more time, now that roaming gets penalized a lot more, so she doesn't have to worry about trying to roam as much, and now that sieging is at a premium, then I think the meta is shifting more than anything else to get her back into the game. And I think that things like Dark Harvest function really well on her because she does such high damage on low cooldowns. So I think she's pretty legit. Katarina is another one that potentially could be tier 1 if you're really good with her. My problem with Kat is, like, her laning phase is just so astronomically bad because she's basically melee. She doesn't have any CC. She's really item dependent. But once she gets those items, you know, once she gets her Gunblade, she's able to get those Dark Harvest resets, once again, really easily because she gets all the resets herself and does tons of damage and people get low. So if you get fed as Katarina, you can definitely fully take over the game. So if you're against something that doesn't have a lot of CC, you're against a, you know, Leblanc, Akali, Karthus, something like that in the laning phase, and you can just get a kill or two on him, you can definitely snowball out of control. I would just rather, if I wanted to play a snowball type of champ, I would just rather play something like Akali, LeBlanc, Kassadin, something like that. Because her wave clear is not amazing. It's okay. She's very vulnerable to CC. It's like it's rough into Kassadin for sure, who's very popular right now. But she could maybe have some game against this other stuff. I think it's going to be hard to blow up Aatrox or Irelia, especially if they just get a Hex Drinker early or something. So she's got a lot of problems, but she can still work. Like, her kit does work extremely well with Dark Harvest, so there is that. Fizz, another one. He's pretty good. You know, he got nerfed a while back, but, you know, he can still one-shot people. His wave clear is very suspicious early on. He can't roam as well for the reasons I described, so he's okay. He's going to have a hard time against Kassadin. He's going to have a hard time against, like, Malzahar, Lissandra. But he could be a good pick into something like Viktor, Karthus. Aatrox and Irelia, you know, it's still going to be hard to blow them up instantly. So He's all right. I mean, he's mobile. He's got like a pretty good kit. If you're good on him and you get ahead, you can definitely snowball and win. Ryze is kind of like, if you're trying to scale up and really play a true 1v9 champ, he's good. Now, he's going to be, I think he's a pretty good pick into things like Irelia and Aatrox. Not 100% about that one, but he's definitely going to have the damage to break through them, to do that sustained damage later on. He does have a point-click CC, so that's very good. Like, if the jungler's coming in, you know, it's something that a lot of these other champions don't offer. A lot of these other sort of top-end champions don't offer, so that's nice. He can rotate to side lanes if you want to do that. Once again, it's riskier to do that now than it used to be, but towers aren't going to break for a long time, and he can just kind of like sustain in lane and farm and at least get an item or two, which is very nice. So it kind of guarantees the games are going to go a little bit longer because of the tower plating, or at least sort of the early game's going to go longer. So he's okay. If you're really good on him, I think he can still be strong. But he's still going to have some tough matchups. I think that things like Leblanc are going to be pretty rough. But he's all right if you're good on him. And then Zed is the final one. Zed's the AD assassin of choice for me. I think that you could put Talon in there, but Zed just has so much like damage potential on a single target, and he can escape. So when he goes in to kill them, then he can very easily jump back. So he's kind of like a worse version of LeBlanc, I think. He does have some decent wave clear if you do the double shuriken if you need to early on. It's risky to do that, but he has okay wave clear. He has really good single target high burst damage. There is counterplay to it if you have something like Zhonya's or GA or like an enchanter that can put on a big shield like a Rakan or a Janna or something like that. But if you get fed, you know, you can definitely make some plays with him. So super high damage potential, great outplay potential. Is severely offended by this pin. She has a weird relationship. Like, she paused the pin, she likes pins, but for some reason she gets like really mad at him. But and he has outplay potential, you know, like in terms of his ult can dodge stuff. You know, you can evade a Karthus ult. I believe if you time it perfectly, I think you can dodge a Karthus ult, because I think he becomes untargetable. I'm not 100%, you'll have to test that out. But I think if you time it perfectly, you can dodge a Karthus ult with his ult. I know you can dodge like a Fizz fish. There are a lot of things you can kind of get around with that ultimate if you play it correctly. So he's okay, he's flashy, he's got a lot of potential. But yeah, just his little bit of extra wave clear and his ability, like his mobility and his ability to outplay people, I think is something different than Talon. Now, Talon can wave clear pretty well, and he can rotate quickly, but when he goes in for that all-in and kill somebody, I think most of the time he's going to die. I mean, he can like try to run away and get over a wall or something, but I feel like Zed's just going to have more potential there. And then like his ultimate, or his passive in conjunction with Dark Harvest, it's just going to add a ton of extra damage to people, I think. So the Dark Harvest damage is going to stack also to help him with the Death Smart doing even more damage. So I think it's pretty legit. It can only affect the same target once every few seconds. So you can still zip around and clean up other people even if you don't have your ult as well. You know, if you're able to run at them and hit them with shurikens and auto attacks and, you know, stuff like that, you can trigger more Dark Harvest, more Contempt for the Weak. So I think that sets him up pretty well. I mean, Ignite's probably still, or not Ignite, Ignite's definitely good on it, but things like Electrocute are probably still pretty good too, but I think just Dark Harvest in conjunction with his Contempt for the Weak can be pretty strong. So yeah, those are the top picks. It's been about an hour and a half, so it's been a really long video, but you know, I haven't done a mid lane tier list in a while, and I just wanted to go over sort of what I think's going on right now. There are a lot of honorable mentions that are pretty good too. I mean, Talon, like I mentioned, could sub in for Zed, which is legit. Someone like Twisted Fate just doesn't have a very good rune right now. He doesn't use Dark Harvest very well. Roaming gets punished a lot more than it has in the past. He does have good wave clear. He can take towers really quick with Lichbane. I just feel like the runing and like his items just are not amazing right now. Even summoners, like there aren't fantastic summoners on him. You know, like Teleport's okay, but he just doesn't quite have the same kind of power that some of these other champions do. Talia still has a pretty good win rate, I think, but they did nerf her pretty hard. She's kind of weak to assassins. They nerfed her wave clear in particular. So she's okay. Echo is someone that gets bandied about. He can be really strong. He does have good play potential against assassins. You know, because he has his ult and he often takes Hourglass. So he could be a pretty good option against Karthus. I just don't think you can pressure people consistently enough with Echo. Like, you can do sort of your double jump with him to get on top of people. So, you know, he can gap close a little bit, but he's still good. I mean, he's just hard to play, and I just think that if I was playing something that's hard to play, I'd probably just play something like Akali or Leblanc or something like that instead. But Echo can still work. He does have that AoE stun, which can come in very handy. Swain doesn't have a huge percentage, like, win rate right now, but he still has good CC. I've seen him used to, like, pretty decent effect in the bot lane. If your support puts some CC on him, then Swain can, like, rip him out. So that could be okay. Like, in the same sort of thread, Vlad is okay. You know, being decent against assassins, being good at charging up over time. But, like, their runes and their items aren't fantastic right now. They're okay. Irelia and Soul got nerfed. I don't remember what exactly happened to him. I think they nerfed his base health, so now he can get blown up by assassins easier. And that push and roam style is also going to get punished more. Orianna's pretty legit. I mean, if you can win with Ori, she's good. Like, she has good wave clear, good utility. I just think if I wanted to play a utility mage right now for team fighting, I'd probably just play Lissandra. Or maybe even Malzahar is kind of like my utility picks, but she's still pretty good. Isn't amazing with Dark Harvest. You know, you're still going to probably have to go something like Ahri on her. So yeah, she's okay. Galio, once again, the roaming is not really happening right now. He's all right. Much better in competitive. Cassiopeia is someone that I thought about putting up there. Her win rate is on the rise right now. Like, the poison ticking with Dark Harvest is really nice, and the fact that she can get a Leandries is good. She does wave clear really quickly. I mean, she could be a candidate for kind of doing this power farm build that I was talking about before, where you would take Smite and start with Hunter's Talisman. Because she really doesn't need, like, oftentimes she'll take, like, Cleanse or something like that. But you could take Smite, Hunter's Talisman, and go try to grab. She is very good at taking dragons. So you could try to grab dragons. You could try to grab Scuttle, Raptors, all that sort of stuff, and just power farm, power push. I mean, that could be a legit strategy on her too, so we'll see. And the strength of her is really, like, in longer fights, especially against tanks. She's going to be pretty good, so she might be a decent answer into something like an Irelia or an Aatrox, if you can kite. Now, she's one of the hardest champions in the whole game to play, because you have to basically play her like an AD carry, but you can't do attack move. At least to my knowledge, you can't do that, so you constantly have to, like, you know, quick poison one way, like, try to run the other way, and then click back with your Twin Fang, click the other way, click back with your Twin Fang. So you constantly have to zip back and forth and have really, like, really fast, like, mouse mechanics. That makes her very difficult to play, and she's very combo-based. If you don't hit your Qs, she's worthless. So you not only have to hit your Qs, but you have to kite in a really awkward way that's, like, super APM intensive. And she has no escapes, really, so you have to dodge everything just by sidestepping it. So, really difficult to play, but she can be good if you can learn her. Azir's another one I didn't mention here, but I think Azir can still be pretty good, potentially, if you're really good on him. But these are all just, like, if you're really good on them, you can make them work, but they're just not going to be as consistent or as rewarding as some of the other ones in terms of, like, win percentage, probably. But, you know, like I said, mid is very diverse. You can still win with some of these if you get practiced, if you get strong on them. So that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this. Once again, sorry it's longer, but especially because it's preseason, there's a ton of changes. I haven't done a mid-tier list in a while. I just wanted to spend a while talking about it just to kind of apprise you and let you know sort of what's going on out there. But that's going to be it. Have a good day, and I'll see everybody next time. Oh, don't forget, like and subscribe if you enjoy the content.